Good morning. Did
Morning.
you did you all need to enter a passcode?
I just emailed you right before I saw that you had emailed it.
Yeah, yeah. Hospital said. Uh, I would I think I think I got in doing one of my updates. One of them was Zoom, and I guess it's requiring that now. Although as a result, yesterday when I had a class, I didn't realize until after the class that no students had arrived because they had all been asked to send a passcode that I
You can
hadn't sent
change
them.
that in your settings. It's like a box you want click.
So where do you do that?
Um, Let me look at Zoom here. It's in like meetings and settings, I believe.
Okay, let me just
And
look.
then you can require that all they need to join is the link. If I can log into my personal one, then okay. So meetings. Oh, so you have a personal Zoom, I think, like a personal Zoom invite that you can use for all meetings. But I'm trying to find where the settings are for the meetings.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you go to settings and then meetings, there's security settings. You can turn off the waiting room. You can turn off the security options like a passcode. Um,
So are you talking about the setting for the individual Zoom or for my all
for
my
the
Zooms?
all your Zooms. I don't know about individual because I don't have any meetings set up on my Zoom, so I can't look at those. But
Right.
yeah,
One reason I'm trying to get this fixed is first of all, so it doesn't happen again, and second of all,
Mhm.
because I have a dissertation defense that's coming up, uh, and I don't want to get it all messed up. So I have my Zoom workplace in front of me here.
Yeah.
Um, where are the settings?
I'm not sure because I don't have Zoom Workplace, so it's probably a different interface. But there is a way, and if you want me to come over and help you, I can do that if you're going to be on campus. But if you're not
Well,
on campus, then no, I
no,
can't do that.
I'm in Kirkwood. Well, you know what?
Okay.
I'm just gonna for right now. I'm just gonna skip it because I've sent the other meeting the code, so hopefully that will that'll
Yeah.
work out okay.
But there is a way. There is a
Okay.
way.
Thank you. Uh,
Mhm.
Hi
One
class.
more thing I wanted to add was like
Shoot.
the limit is only 40 minutes long.
Mhm.
Oh, I see that. Well,
Mhm. You can, I do School of Medicine, and we had to reach out to tech support in order to be able to do longer than 40-minute meetings because it was a different access that they had. So you might have to do that if they updated and reduced it to 40-minute meetings.
I'm really glad that you mentioned that.
A good IHOP, so I didn't even notice that.
I mean, I didn't notice that until you just said it. Was that there the whole time?
No, because it will automatically shut the meeting down after 40 minutes, no matter what, when that's up.
I mean, I'm not so much worried about this meeting because I was already going to shorten it, not that much, but I need to get ready for the dissertation thing. But that's going to be a huge problem for me on the dissertation. Um, so let me see real quick if I can.
Is the Zoom through your SIU,
Yes.
then Siluki Tech can probably help you.
Yeah, that's where I'm trying to go here. Anybody have anything in the news?
I mean, other than the big thing that happened with the group chat, or Trump saying that he will do anything that needs to be done to take Greenland or whatever. Like, those are the things that I heard today or yesterday.
Right.
Uh, yeah, I mean, like I was just reading it on CNN. I'll share the link real quick too. He wanted the Supreme Court to overturn I think it was called the Enemies Alien Sedition Act, something like that.
Right. Alien and Sedition Act. You do you remember that, Hafsa, from our First Amendment course? You
I'm
got
trying to
yourself
remember it.
you got yourself in trouble here, didn't you? By you provided good information and then you got yourself in trouble. So Alien Sedition Act was I always teach that in
Oh yeah, I think it was related to the World War I case, right?
well, it was sort of, yeah. I mean, Alien Sedition Act was passed in 1798, as I think you just said, and it was like during, it was when the Federalists and the Jeffersonians were fighting. The Jeffersonians were on the side of France, and the Federalists, like John Adams, were on the side of uh, on the side of Britain. Britain and France were fighting. Um, and the Alien and Sedition Act, I guess the sedition portion of it, uh, made it illegal to criticize the president. Um,
Yeah.
Trump has said some things lately about about similar stuff. Anyway, and so that was used then to arrest a bunch of Jeffersonian newspaper editors and put them in jail. And of course, the only way, and that was before judicial review, before Marbury versus Madison established judicial review in 1803. So there wasn't a like a a, a court suit that anyone could file to go to court and get the Supreme Court to do anything about it. So uh, Jefferson wrote the Kentucky resolution, and Madison wrote the Virginia resolution saying, "Hey, Congress shouldn't be able to do this." All of it was settled, or mostly was settled at the for that time, for that era was settled with the election of 1800, where Jefferson won, thanks to the three-fifths compromise that gave southern states more power, and Adams lost, and yeah, Trump has been the Trump administration and Trump himself have been citing that law to back up some of his deportations. Um, I don't think there's also a separate law that dates back to the 1950s and sort of the Red Scare era that's been used in some of the other deportations. So that's one of a couple of laws that have been brought up. But as you say, Vance and his wife are visiting the U.S. base in Greenland, and Trump is reiterating how he wants. It's good for it's vital to the United States and to the world that the United States take over Greenland. Um, and the people in Greenland aren't too excited. They withdrew the invitation for um, uh, Mrs. Vance to witness the. Well, I take that back. They had never made an invitation for Mrs. Vance or any other American to witness the dog sled race, but made very clear that the Americans were not invited, so they didn't go. They went to the U.S. base instead. That's on the Greenland. I guess it's the space base where the people are called guardians. Sort of sci-fi like. Anyway, so that's going on. Also, Trump signed an executive order last night. Um, this is sort of relevant to maybe even a little bit more relevant to this class. He said an executive order last night saying that Vance, as a person on the board um, of the Smithsonian institutions,
Yes, I heard about that one because
yeah,
of improper ideology, because they're
im
rewriting history about race and gender.
improper ideology
Yeah.
that might, cause divisions amongst the American people about our history. Um, so that's an interesting one. Uh,
Wasn't there like a zoo involved too? Like, how are the zoos
the National
promoting
Zoo, I have no idea.
ideology? I don't get it. I don't
I
get anything that's happening right now.
I have no idea. But I'll tell you what, one thing that it made me think about immediately was I don't know how many of you have been to the I don't know how many of you have been to the Arch and the Jefferson National Expansion Memorial that is underneath the Arch at the Visitor Center. When I was a kid and the Arch was just finished being built. I mean, actually, when I was like a teenager. Well, they finished it in '64. Yeah, teenager, and visited that National Expansion Memorial. It was all about Manifest Destiny and the Cowboys uh, um, and it was America's manifest destiny to go to the ocean, the Pacific Ocean, and lots of covered wagons and stuff. And if you go there now, it's a very different, um, much more complete take on life in St. Louis during that since that period of time of the Louisiana Purchase in I guess also 1803. Is that right? Um, when Missouri became and all the other French area west of the Mississippi became part of the United States, um, because Napoleon sold it to the U.S. because he needed money to fight the war in Europe. Anyway, um, so I immediately when I read about the Trump executive order um, on ideology, I made me wonder whether it would be targeted at that kind of a. I think that's a part of the Smithsonian. I could be wrong. I think it's part of the Smithsonian. He definitely mentioned in the executive order both the Women's Museum, the Black History Museum that opened a couple years ago, and the American History Museum. I'm not exactly sure. Is that the Native American History? I know there is a Native American exhibit on the mall now, which I don't think I've seen.
Well,
It's
not
also,
for much longer.
I shouldn't laugh.
Well, I mean, they took away all of the information about Navajo code talkers off websites. I'm assuming they're gonna start removing mentions of natives elsewhere as well. As well, excuse me.
It would seem to
Yeah.
be consistent. Let's see, before I get signed off away from you guys, let me at least give you some credit. Anything else in the news? Maybe I'll be less snarky when I finish giving you credit.
Snark is good.
Yeah, I hope I'm not creating divisions.
Yeah. Some
Par-
divisions need to be created.
Parker, Hannah, let's see.
I think what I don't get about all this is nobody's like rewriting history. They're just including the people that you didn't include for hundreds of years. And inclusion isn't erasure. I don't, but
Yeah,
apparently that's a dumb thought. I don't know.
yeah, I think so. They're
Mhm.
changing back a lot of putting the Confederate generals' names back in a lot of like army bases, and Fort Bragg is back to being Fort Bragg, named after a Confederate general. Um, see, Parker, let me get you some credit here. Show, got you, Joe. As I've said a couple of times to people that some of you all have already got your 150 credit points, and so I'm giving you extra credit for uh, being in the class. See if I missed anybody.
Hello, 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 hello.
Hello, who's that?
Hi, Joe.
Sorry, it's supposed to be testing it. I don't know what's going on. It keeps disconnecting. I'm sorry. I went to like test something else.
You you started
Uh,
this. Did you enter the passcode?
yeah, no, no. I don't know. That's wild. It was doing that. But did it just stop?
Yeah, it's stopped. I mean, we can hear you, but it's not going
All right.
hello, hello, hello.
All right, cool. Thank you. No, I was saying the Fort Bragg doesn't make sense because they changed it to a World War I hero and then they changed it from him back to someone else. Or that was Fort Liberty, one of the two.
I think it was Liberty that was back to Bragg. I'm not sure. I could
Yeah.
be wrong. Um, okay,
But,
I think I got everybody their credit.
and I mean, they're working on defunding the Department of Education and NPR and PBS right now,
Oh yeah, I think they're gonna. I think that will happen.
right? And I think the main thing was they're saying that people have satellite radio now, and it's like 0.01% of the budget.
Yeah, yeah. Plus, you can now get all that great accurate information off TikTok and all.
And another big thing was they were saying it like, what was it? Was it Daniel? Which Sesame Street wasn't profitable for HBO, and
Right.
so that's why they want to cancel it off of PBS or something.
Why are you going after Sesame Street, man?
Big
Oh,
What's
I
wrong
bird.
with
watched
you?
You
the
can't
hearing
go after
yesterday. Those
Big Bird.
hearings are so bad.
Well, okay, yeah, so lots of stuff going on. Um, okay, you know what? I'm going to sort of go, since we have a limited time, I guess we're gonna get cut off at 10:40. Um, so I'm just gonna zip right through the Lochner era and um, and the New Deal, um, so that we so that you have that material here. Let me get that up real quickly. So the Lochner case, so you know, where we were last in talking about the post Civil War Supreme Court interpretation of the 14th Amendment was that the Supreme Court mostly uh, read um, read read the protections of the 14th Amendment out of the Constitution. Um, you know, they said that equal protection didn't apply to women. That was in the Virginia minor suffrage case. They said that women couldn't be lawyers. That was the Myra Bradwell, I think, was her name in Illinois, a woman who wanted to be a lawyer. Uh, the civil rights cases grew out of some refusal to allow blacks into trains and other public accommodations. And the Supreme Court said the equality guarantee didn't permit Congress to reach any kind of private discrimination. That'd be an invasion of individual rights. Plessy versus Ferguson, separate was good enough. So the whole era of de jure by law segregation was upheld in that case. Um, so then, but while they read the sort of equality, remedial, or the equality guarantee out as related to blacks and women. They read in uh, to the 14th Amendment protection for um, extra protection for property. They said that the due process clause of the 14th Amendment protects property under the due process clause, and they in particular said that related to the contracts, um, and you know they said that they had to give equal protection to those contracts because of so as to protect the rights of the worker to make a contract under whatever terms, um, and this extra constitutional protection that the court read into the 14th Amendment due process clause then was used to strike down all sorts of of worker protection laws that were passed during during the so-called progressive era that followed upon all the abuses of the Gilded Age of the late 1800s. Um, and so, you know, like minimum wage, maximum hour, child labor, uh, all of these kinds of um, laws were struck down. Um, and that was based on the clause of the 14th Amendment: life, liberty, and property is cannot be taken away without due process of law. The same clause that then later in 1973 is used to protect privacy and a woman's right to have an abortion, which now has been read out of the Constitution. 1900 the Lochner, so it's called the Lochner era because of the 1905 case called Lochner versus New York. Um, there was a New York bake shop law limiting bakers' hours. John Lochner, a New York baker, was arrested for employing bakers longer than 10 hours a day and 60 hours a week. The court held that the law interfered with the worker's liberty to decide how many hours are appropriate or necessary to support himself and his family. That's a quote. Uh, it was interesting that the court claimed that it was protecting the workers' rights rather than the prerogatives of the corporation, um, who were the obvious beneficiaries of the law, of the company, the baking company in that case. Um, the court was dismissive of the workers' conditions, suggesting that 10 hours a day, 60 days a week was actually cushy. Quote, to the common understanding, the trade of a baker has never been regarded as unhealthy, the court said. Uh, Justice Harlan, who was the one Supreme Court justice who dissented in Plessy versus Ferguson, the separate but equal case. He dissented again in Lochner. He pointed out that the New York could reasonably conclude that Baker's long hours were harmful, and he cited an official publication called Diseases of the Worker that concluded that labor of bakers is among the hardest and most laborious imaginable because it's performed at night in overheated factories. Um, Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes said, also dissented. He said, um, and this is Holmes was always really good at. He's a patrician. He was a Boston patrician, and he was really smart and good writer, and came up with phrases that were memorable. You may remember uh, if when if you were in my First Amendment class, the fire in a crowded theater. That was his. And also memorable, but less progressive, uh, not very, not at all progressive. Quote in Buck versus Bell in the 1920s, Holmes upheld a Virginia mandatory sterilization law in which he said 3 generations of imbeciles is enough, and therefore the state had a right to sterilize a woman who they thought was an imbecile. Actually, she was doing quite well in school. At any rate, his quote in Lochner in the dissent was the 14th Amendment does not enact Herbert Spencer's social statics. Spencer was an Englishman who authored a well-known libertarian theory popular among libertarians at the time that included Holmes. The theory being survival of the fittest. It argued social statics argued against public schools, health and safety regulations, medical licensing, and welfare. Those, quote, sufficiently complete to live do live. Those not sufficiently complete to live, they die. And it is, I'm quoting now from Spencer's Social Statics. Those sufficiently complete to live do live. Those not sufficiently complete to live, they die. And it is best that they should die. The whole effort of nature is to get rid of such, to clear the world of them and make room for better. 3 years after Lochner, the Supreme Court made an exception for women, upholding Oregon's 10-hour workday for women. The court was persuaded to approve the law by a 113-page brief written by Louis Brandeis. Brandeis later becomes a justice on the Supreme Court, who is notable for his First Amendment and privacy cases. But that decision was hardly a victory for women because it was an invitation to permanent status of inequality and inferiority. My free meeting will end in 10 minutes. Need more time? Contact your administrator to upgrade your plan. Oh, God. You know, this is an editorial. The university should not make it harder to teach.
Has that ever not been the case?
Okay.
Maybe the government doesn't want you to teach equal justice
Maybe
under the
they
law.
don't want you to teach us about justice.
That's right. No equal justice. Too
That
much
was
equal
funny, Asa.
justice. 40 minutes is enough equal justice for one day. Okay, I'm just going to talk faster because it's too hard to get to 10 minutes. This was a very patriarchal or decision. The the Oregon 10-hour workday decision said the woman's physical structure and the performance of maternal functions place her at a disadvantage in the struggle for no, I'm not reading it right. So this is Justice David Brewer. And he says that woman's physical structure and the performance of maternal functions place her at a disadvantage in the struggle for subsistence is obvious, Brewer said. This is especially true when the burdens of motherhood are upon her. By abundant testimony of the medical fraternity, continuance for a long time on her feet at work, repeating this from day to day, tends injurious effects upon the body, as healthy mothers are essential to vigorous offspring. The well-being of woman becomes an object of public interest and care public interest and care in order to preserve the strength and vigor of the race. Okay, let's see, what else do I want to say about Lochner? So, uh, the Lochner was still the law of the land come the Depression, the Great Depression in 1929, that resulted in Franklin D. Roosevelt's election in 1932, the New Deal legislation that came with him. Um, um, there was an interesting piece that the political scientist Heather Cox Richardson wrote this past week on an anniversary of the sort of famous shirtwaist um, fire in New York City, where women in a big factory were locked in by their companies because for fear they would steal blouses that they were making in this sweatshop on an upper floor of a factory building, and fire broke out. They couldn't get out. They ended up jumping to their death, and this was a horrible moment, obviously, and it inspired Francis Perkins, who witnessed it and later became Roosevelt's labor secretary, to urge Roosevelt to adopt many of the New Deal laws that were adopted. Um, but then this, because Lochner was still the law of the land, a number of them were struck down, like the Agricultural Adjustment Act, the National Recovery Act. The court ruled that FDR and Congress had violated the freedom to contract by regulating business and labor. Roosevelt ran against the court in 1936 and won a huge landslide, won all but two states, and had a heavily Democratic Congress. And he tried to pack the Supreme Court. Yeah, I mean, the verdict of history is that this was overreach by Roosevelt. He said that the elderly court, where the average age was 71, was suffering from judicial hardening of the arteries, was his term. He wanted the Congress to allow him to appoint 6 new justices, one for every justice over 70. Chief Justice Charles Evans Hughes opposed the plan, but soon he and Justice Owen Roberts began approving New Deal laws, including the Social Security Act, National Labor Relations Act, giving workers bargaining rights. The change in their votes was sometimes referred to as the switch in time that saved 9. Meaning they switched the sides and it saved the Supreme Court from being packed. Roosevelt still pushed for the Senate vote, but the chief sponsor, who was, I think, the Democratic Senate leader, was trying to break a filibuster and had the Senate meeting it all through the night in super hot August weather, and he collapsed and died. And with him went the effort to pack the court. Some people have suggested when Biden was the president a few months ago that packing the court was something that the Democratic Congress, when it still had control, should consider. My own view is that that kind of political manipulation of the court is not a good idea, regardless of who's president. Um, okay. What else do you need to know? Packing the court. Oh, one other one other thing to realize when, the Trump has gotten criticism, and I think rightfully so, by with various suggestions about that he might not follow court orders. Although they haven't. Well, I take that back. Uh, I mean, in deporting the Venezuelans, they did ignore a judge's oral order, not written order, but oral order to turn the planes around. But there have been precedents in history um, who have taken the same view that Trump does. Some Trumpians and Vice President Vance has taken, and that is that the president can't ignore the Supreme Court. We talked a little bit about this last week when we were talking about the Native American removal from Georgia. President Andrew Jackson saying maybe apocryphally, John Marshall's made his decision. Now let him enforce it. The Supreme Court had ruled that states couldn't order the removal of Native Americans from land in order to seize the land. Thomas Jefferson also took the view that the Supreme Court couldn't tell him what to do. And Abraham Lincoln. So I mean, we're talking here about three of the least most powerful, most notable presidents in American history took that view in denying Chief Justice Taney's, remember he's the author of Dred Scott decision, attempt to get him to abide by the habeas corpus provisions of the Constitution, which require if a person's arrested, they have to be able to go to court and demand to know what the charges against them are. I give
You have 1 minute, just letting you know.
Lincoln, Lincoln also censored a bunch of newspapers that opposed the draft. Anybody have any questions?
Nope.
I'll have this fixed by next week, and I'll drone on for 2 hours. I promise.
So the class ended?
Huh?
The class is ended because we can just rejoin it. I mean,
Yeah,
He
but
has to leave early
I
anyway.
have
Yeah.
this dissertation. Do you know Elizabeth Farrakhan? Do any of you know her? She's a PhD student, and she's defending her dissertation, and I'm her chair, so I have to be there. And I have to, before that, I have to try to see if I can work out we definitely need 2 hours for that. So yeah, class is ending, and I'll send you the truncated recording so maybe you can watch it again. Okay. See you
Okay.
later. Bye-bye.
Bye.